Okay, so we're doing the new moon in Leo update for 2018. So we have the Leo cycle, which will be happening starting on September the 9th. And that will be a new moon in Leo in Purva Falguni Nakshatra happening starting. So we can see the chart here. Let me get back to it here. So as we see the chart here, the moon is in Leo. Now when sun and moon come together, that's what forms a cycle in the classic Indian sense. That's literally what a month is. And it's the reason why there are 12 months in the year. That's also the foundational principle and source of 12 zodiac signs, because they carved up the sky to accommodate the 12 cycles, the 12 lunation cycles, because you're going to have each new moon and full moon occurring in one of the 12 portions. So by the time the sun and moon comes back, by the time the sun and moon comes back to its reset point every month, it's going to be in a different section of the sky. And so that's why we have 12 zodiac signs. 12. Because it's carving up the sky into these 12 portions. So the 12 months and the 12 zodiac signs break up the year, and they coordinate the time cycles. Well, literally the sun and moon cycles, the months show the relationship between the sun, moon, and earth. And then the zodiac signs actually are the way we look into the sky and not only measure the lunation cycles, but also other planets moving through the sky. So that's what the zodiac is. The zodiac measures not only lunation cycles, like new moons and full moons, because we see it in the sky. So we're saying, okay, that's where it's happening in the sky at these precise coordinates. But then we also see other planets move through the sky. And we measure those also by the precise coordinates. Again, this is why the sidereal zodiac is used, has always been used. And it wasn't until way after, it had been used to measure things in India, in Egypt, in Babylon, with the three original cultures that developed astrology, that the Greeks imported the zodiac from Babylon, which is purely sidereal, 12 30-degree sidereal portions as astrology was becoming sophisticated. But the Greeks pinned those 30-degree cycles to the seasons rather than the sky. And that's what the tropical zodiac is. So the tropical zodiac is an abstraction of the original zodiac. The original zodiac is how you measure things. One of the things you measure is lunation cycles, which are months basically, but the months aren't based on the calendar. The months are actually based on the sky. And even now, one of the reasons why we're so out of whack is because we have a calendar that's not based on the sky. That's not based on the sun, moon, and earth. Instead, the months that we have are called January, February. They're Roman. They're called Gregorian months because they're based on the Roman calendar. but they don't, but they're just, again, they're just an extrapolation. They're a way to try to organize the time and the sun moon cycles. 1 year is the Earth going around the sun. 12 months are 12 lunation cycles, new moon to new moon, happening each year. So what they do in India still is their months and their time cycles are coordinated with actual astrological phenomena, like new moons, full moons. All the festivals, they don't fall on calendar dates, they fall on lunar dates. They fall on certain tithis and whatnot. And back in the ancient Vedas, in the Vedic times, all of the months of the year and the seasons were also coordinated. You had, the year began on the month of Tapa, when the sun and moon came together after the winter solstice. That's when the year started. It was the first month of the year. It started after the solstice, and it happened when the new moon and full moon came together in that month. And that month was called Tapa. And the months were different than the zodiac. Again, it's quite confusing. It's very easy to get confused. And a lot of astrologers now who try to act like the Indians were using a tropical zodiac because they had 12 tropical signs, or I'm sorry, because they had 12 tropical months. Tropical months are different than tropical signs. Zodiac is different than calendar. It's very easy to conflate these things. So this is why we talk about 12 portions of the year. And that's why I've been doing these calendar and new moon, full moon updates for since 2009. Because those are the real cycles of time here on Earth, whether we know it or not. And because we're out of step literally with those cycles, we're not living in coordination with those cycles anymore. We think a month is September or whatever. I mean, that's a Gregorian calendar month. It's okay to look at it because it's how we're used to marking time. Oh, this month is going to be blah, blah. The real way to look at this month is this new moon to the next new moon is blah. And this eclipse and this, that, we're just now finishing the eclipse. We don't really have much of the eclipse. I don't really consider that the previous eclipse portal has closed until we have the next new moon, which is what's going to happen on September the 9th. So let me pull this up. So on September the 9th, 2018, we have this new moon in Leo. Now, if we go back, where is it? Months. Yeah, if we go back the previous month, you see this was the previous month, was on an eclipse. So the previous 30 days, which started in, which was August 10th, August 11th, is when we had the eclipse. Mercury was retrograde. There was aspect for Mars retrograde. That's why this last month, August was intense, overused word, but boy, is it true. Because then the previous 2 weeks, we had this eclipse. July 27th, we had this. We'll talk about an intense solar eclipse with Mars closer than it's been in the last few hundred years or so. So since the end of July, it's really been screaming of change, transformation, destroying the old, and revealing a lot of the underbelly of the world, and really trying to call us into positive action and face our fear of death and transformation, and summon the courage to fight for what's right. 2 weeks later, we had this eclipse in Cancer, join retrograde Mercury, aspected by Mars. I've been saying that a big lesson in this eclipse, I said it in the one back in January, was to destroy the relativism and to reveal the danger of this sort of post-fact, post-truth world. We now live in a world where opinions masquerade as facts just as easily. We can throw around anything we don't like, any fact pattern that we don't like can just be disregarded as fake news and anything, and without using any discrimination whatsoever, not believing anything, again, not just politically, but because we realize that things aren't what they seem on some level, then all of a sudden nothing, then we feel like we can't trust anything. And the only reason we feel like we can't trust anything is because we're so intellectually lazy and looking for stimulation and data rather than using common sense and finding the real truth and being willing to work to find the truth rather than just be entertained. And this whole illusion, which the internet is certainly a big contributing factor for sure. We're more likely to listen to the person with the most popular internet channel than we are the person who has studied something for 50 years or whatever. Again, it's just because all of our biases, all of these cognitive biases in the brain and whatnot, and we have so much data. We live in this age of information, but it's really like an age of misinformation as well. These eclipses of this year, which started back in January, is certainly this one here is truly revealing these themes and bringing us in intimate contact with them. And we're seeing a lot of secrets revealed. We saw some disgraceful revelations in the Catholic Church. I've been meaning to do an update of the Pope and his chart and these times, which I plan to do. Been busy with courses and whatnot. And those shocking ideas coming into light. Of course, in the United States, we've seen the secrets revealed of our president. I said it back before these eclipses started, back before he even went to Europe and Helsinki and all of that, which was shocking. I said because these eclipses would be in his 12th house and over his sun, over his Saturn and Venus, that there would be new revelations about sex scandals and other things that really hurt his career. Little did we know what was in store. Talk about secrets revealed. Seems like everybody who's been around the president has been carrying a tape recorder for the last few years. Unbelievable. Secret recordings of Trump and books from Omarosa. Now a book from Woodward is coming out, which is extremely damaging. Now we find out there's a secret operative or a culture of operatives in the White House that have been, and now they just went to the New York Times. Talk about a rough day. The president is really getting it. And you can see clearly why when you look at his chart, because he has a Leo ascendant, and all of these eclipses have been in his 12th house. So for like a month and a half, 2 months, he's been getting eclipsed and all these secrets coming out. Shocking secrets, flooding. And again, as everything is measured from the birth chart, from the birth ascendant, and his ascendant is Leo. So right now he's getting eclipsed. Well, I'm sorry, he's not getting eclipsed, but on this new moon that's coming, it's right in his first house. So it's for all the Leos, this is like a rebirth, a regeneration. Because the last couple months for all Leos have been pretty intense, particularly those who have planets in the 12th house. And if you're a Leo and you have planets in the 12th house, these last couple months have been very much about a certain quality of loss, letting go, perhaps in a positive way. I do know a couple Leos who have lost and shed some very important things like disease and illness. It was a great time for Leo to purge and let go of things because that's the power of the 12th house. So again, these are how these cycles work, these 30-day cycles. We have 30 days each. And relative to where that cycle is happening from your ascendant, you're going to be working on that life lesson. And of course, I do these forecasts every month and every day. So I have daily forecasts that I do every day based on the Indian Panchanga, which means based on these things like Amavasya is the Tithi, Sunday is the Vara Lord, Purva Falguni is the Nakshatra Lord, but I also look at the Rashi that it's in, of course. I also look at any aspects, and I tie those things together so that you can understand the overall feeling and flavor of each day, important things to look for. But then within each day, we're having a cycle based on that month, the actual month, not September, but this is the beginning of the month of Bhadrapada. Yeah, it's Bhadrapada. Sorry, I have to bone up on Indian months. Sometimes I get them wrong. Bhadrapada. And oops. Okay. So and those things are based on sun moon conjunctions. So we see here the sun is in Leo, and we look at the moment that we have the new moon, and it's in Purva Falguni, that nakshatra, and the Rashi of Leo. So Leo is ruled by the sun. So it's about reestablishing power. And the clarity that comes when power is asserted and reasserted and shining bright, being clear, showing the truth, showing integrity. To use the situation that I just talked about without getting too political, we're seeing, at least in the revelations of secrets happening now, we're seeing those trying to reassert a certain light, bring about a certain truth, and shining a light so that people can see what's behind the scenes, what's dark. So again, this is what the sun is about, and this is what Leo in general is wanting to reveal. Again, we had like the sex scandals in the Catholic Church. Now this happened while that eclipse was going on, while we were in the Cancer eclipse. And but again, we have now, we're seeing a lot more of the even the sort of calls for Francis to resign or other kinds of, ways to unseat corrupt power and establish good power or good teachings. Of course, now we're seeing in the US with the president and all of the secrets coming to light to help to restore and correct perhaps abuses of power or places where people don't feel like the power of the kingdom or of the king or whatever, the sovereign, is being used wisely. And so we're seeing this, we're all having this relationship with our own power, and we can see it playing out externally this way, where we're asking questions about, where perhaps we're happy to see that finally this is coming to light. Others who don't agree or who hold a pretty minority opinion that it's deep state conspiracies and all that, think it's another kind of thing where they're trying to, where it's a false power trying to take away from the real power. I'm not going to get into the debate, but it's the same issue. And so when you talk about the astrology of it, you're seeing the same issue. And I'm not rendering an opinion. I'm saying these are the events that are happening, though. And you can see it in this Leo context. Leo is also very traditional. It's entrenched. So some would say like establishment. So even seeing like establishment figures like Bob Woodward, who was the author of the book, or establishment figures, let's say in the White House, who brought forth that op-ed article to the New York Times. They're working behind the scenes to try to maintain an established order. And those who are Trump supporters, no matter what, say the reason they're doing it is because he's not establishment. And they're saying, well, maybe he's not establishment. And we agree with his policies, because that's actually what was happening in the New York Times. The Mole is saying, we like the president's policies. We want to help them succeed. It's just he's dangerous. He's so unhinged. He's so unpredictable. He could do anything at any time, and we have to constantly protect the country and the world from what he might do to undermine himself and everything else. But they actually want him to succeed, but they want him to succeed in a way that's not going to destroy everything, in their words. So it's this establishment versus this unconventional approach, if you want to take the side of the president. Either way, it's Leo themes. These are Leo themes. Is it the unconventional king or the mad king? Right? But it's all Leo. It's about the truest source of power. What's the truth? What's integrity here? And they're doing the, bringing in, a certain amount of integrity to that issue, at least trying to. So these are very much, aside from the external thing we see in the world, this is also part of what you're going through. It's what we're all going through. Again, I tend to use external events as things we can see that show the trends. So it also has to do with the other themes that are brought up, like the power struggles. Now, it was between, let's say, the president and Bob Mueller, and the fake news and the witch hunt and all of the stuff that he would rail against. Now, the call is being brought up, or I'm sorry, now the call, we realize that the call is coming from within the House. You can't say this is the witch hunt. This is your cabinet, people you appointed. So now it's like, we can look at this as an allegory and as a theme of how we're doing the same thing. Let's look at this personally. Again, instead of fixating on the external and then acting like, well, who knows? They say this, they say that. Who knows? We don't know. we can use our brain and also look at how this plays out within ourselves. Because there's also counterfeit power struggles happening in you, where you might blame something else externally for why you're not as powerful as you'd like to be, or why you don't succeed. It's because of them, it's because of that, it's not me, it's not me. But it's actually, all of it is us. We're doing all of it. And the great thing about Leo, and the lesson of Leo, is about integrity. It's about integrity and getting clear about what we're putting forth, and the necessity to be utterly responsible for that. So this is what the cycle of Leo is about every year. So someone who was born with the Leo rising sign, or planets in Leo, or any planet in Leo, is going to strive for integrity. And so integrity is a very important word. Honesty is part of it, but honesty flows from integrity. Because integrity is again, confidence is a part of it. But confidence is also, you can have integrity and not always be confident in certain situations. But if you have integrity, you're okay with not being confident, because there's an honesty and a realness to it. And you can show your frailty, or you can show your confusion and not feel like you're somehow minimized. When someone has integrity, their honest confessions of weakness elevates them, doesn't debase them. Because integrity is a sense of self-knowing that's comfortable with itself, and that is not defining itself by behavior, particularly being this way for that person, this way for that person, phony, trying to impress people with whatever, or, shallowness. Integrity is when the self-knowledge starts to go deep. Then you'll see and you'll recognize that a person they are pretty much the same with all people. Now, it doesn't mean your behavior is the same with all people, because, of course, you behave and you treat, for instance, children different than you treat adults, or, animals, or whatever. But you'll see that there's no changing of ethics and morals and values. There's no respect level difference. Like, someone who has integrity and self-awareness will treat a child and a dog with as much respect as they treat, the president or someone they really admire. They're not behaving situationally. They're not grouchy and abusive to their underlings and cowering to their overlords. They're not, they have a confidence and the dignity to look their superiors and their, those above them in the eye and be honest. And they have the same integrity to not abuse the authority that they have over those underneath of them. So this is how you really understand integrity, because it comes into play when we get power. And underneath it all, Leo is a sign of power. And this power can be abused, can make us feel abused if we're not comfortable and confident and have integrity in ourselves. When you start to have power, you'll see those who are weak start to project onto you. And then what do? For example, those who, I of course get a certain amount of it because I'm well known, and in astrology, I'm not going to say powerful or whatever, none of that matters. But because I'm well known, that gives me a certain amount of influence and, quote, power. And so people who are insecure about themselves will often just vent and dump, right? There was a time when I would get in there and fight with them because it insulted me. Now it's not insulting. It's just unfortunate that so much of public life, so much of life just wanting to contribute revolves around those things. And so anyone who goes into anything publicly has to deal with a certain amount of that, deal with the projections from the insecure. You see all kinds of things that happen when you get a certain amount of, power is the word, I guess, or just reputation or stature. You'll see people will try to manipulate you as a result. They'll try to compliment you to death to give them something. And it's very easy for people, if they don't have integrity, if they're insecure in themselves, to believe all the praise and to be motivated and to be influenced by that praise. And then you'll know how to get what you want from that person by simply praising them. And by the way, this is one of the things that our president is weak on. And you could spot it a mile away. And you can now see how almost every world leader, and this is a personal opinion, has gotten pretty much what he wants, what they want from our president by flattering him. Because if you flatter him, you'll calm him down. If you say, yes, you're the most powerful. Yes, you're the greatest. Yes, it was you who did it. Yes, you're wonderful. Then he won't give you a hard time. But if you say, I'm just as strong, then all of his belligerence comes out because he has to prove that he's stronger. So you can flatter him and get what you want, or flatter him and he'll leave you alone. However, that only lasts for a certain amount of time. Strategically and in a business sense, it's great for them to do that. They've learned to just flatter him and do that. And when he rails, ignore him. But of course, they don't have to deal with him more intimately. On a more intimate level, those who maybe would have to deal with him or people like that are going to constantly have to flatter him. And you just can't do that. That's not an equal relationship. That's the abuse of power. That's that sort of king tyrant sort of mentality. At least that's the way it looks to most. Those are different levels of viewing that same idea. And underneath it all, there's not integrity because there's insecurity. So you see all of these things start to happen when someone gets power. And when people don't have power, it's very easy to opine about these things and say, well, I would never do that. I would never do that. No one knows until they start getting more and more power. Now, we all have a certain amount of power. We all have people that praise us for something, and we see ourselves in that situation. So I'm talking about this because this is what you should be looking at right now and being very honest about it with the power you have. We all have a certain amount of power. If nothing more, we have power over those who love us because we know we can do certain things and they won't leave us because they love us. It's a very terrible, sad thing that human beings do. We hurt the ones we love because we know we can get away with it. That includes children because they're vulnerable. We have power over children. We have power over those who are vulnerable to us and what we might do to them if they don't stay in line. We have power over the person at the store, the checkout counter person, the person who works for the company that we paid money to. Well, I spent money on this, so I can rant and rave and abuse you because I spent some money. Now I have some power. I have the right. I've bought the right to hassle you. This is what money does, because money is an exchange of power, and people sometimes feel like because they've spent $10, that gives them the right to treat you like they own you. And Notice the way you act in different situations, and if there's a core through line of integrity. Do you treat those who could fire you from your job the same way as those who you could punish? Do you treat them both the same? Now, of course, you have a different relationship with them, but I mean, internally, do you have the same sense of dignity and respect for yourself when you're around your bosses, and is your behavior congruent and honest, just as integral, with just as much integrity and honesty as it is around your kids or your pets or other people, or the person at the checkout line, or the person where you have some power and authority to act out with no consequences? Talked about this the other day. We live in a world where because of the online world, again, this goes back to this whole Mercury retrograde, Mercury being eclipsed theme, that we communicate in a world now and in so many interactions without consequences, where we can just show up and burn somebody on the internet and then leave hiding behind some anonymous alias because there's no consequences to it. And we're free to do it, and it seems like there's no consequences, but there are consequences. And I don't just mean that karma is going to get you for doing it. I mean the psychological and emotional capital that we expend when we do that kind of BS. It's like that junk food habit. It's like we're getting our aggressions out in ways that seem like there's no consequence to it. But it is. We pay a price for it. We pay a price for those interactions. And just like you remember every person who acted that way, even once. They can deal with you 100 times in a way that's pleasant and that's conscious and loving. It only takes one time for them to flip out, and you'll never forget it. You will always remember, you got to watch that person. You never know. They flipped out and went crazy on me that one time, and you'll never forget it. That's what Saturn is, by the way. He remembers those things because it only takes once for someone to flip out on you, and who knows, they might kill you. I mean, that's what's in the primal mind. I know with myself, as someone who does business with a lot of people that I don't know, because my reach exceeds my grasp, I contact a lot of people that I don't really know them, and they can buy my product. They can buy my products and my courses and whatnot. Most of the time, literally 95, 99% of the time, it's all smooth. But sometimes even I'll have an interaction with people that I've known for a long time, and then one day something will happen and they just flip out in ways by calling you names, threatening to report you. I don't know, all kinds of things that aren't real, because I also know the law and they can't really do any, there are laws in this country and I know how the laws work, but that doesn't matter. It really only takes once that someone flips out, especially if there's any kind of threats or any kind of calling me names, or I don't know, this thing comes out and I'm like, okay, bye. So just so you know, because you got to protect yourself, and I don't want to deal with people like that. It only takes once usually. And I'm like, okay, I've removed you from my database. I won't contact you anymore. It's best to just not interact anymore, because again, I mean, you don't know what you're dealing with. And I don't know the people, especially, and of course, this is if I don't know them. So I'm saying all of this because we all can get into this is the world we live in now. We live in a world where lines of integrity and self-awareness and communication and our interactions are so fragmented. It's very hard to keep a congruent check on yourself. This is why I'm talking about this in the Leo cycle. This is what integrity is. Keeping a check and balance on yourself. And by the way, I saw someone said, sorry, Sam, you pay a price. Please don't feel bad for me. I'm so blessed and so lucky. I use it as an example, and I said it's maybe 1%. It's not a big deal. What I'm saying, though, is that even on any level, and notice it in your life as well. This is what I'm saying, because please, I'm not here begging for sympathy, because I'm so blessed, it's unbelievable. I'm just using it as an example of what might seem small. When we do those things, we pay a price. And we pay a price, and when we spread something like that, we pay the price to the other person and miss out on things that we maybe never even know. And because it's so easy for us to vent through emails or vent through different things or act a certain way, we all gotta watch it. I gotta watch it, of course, as well. And in our tone, because I can be very blunt and very direct, and it can come off as being aggressive. I've had to learn this myself, because I have to deal with a lot of people just in a personal sense. And a lot of times when you're teaching, you have to just be very direct. Or when you're running a course that has a lot of people in it, and it's kind of a bunch of people, you have to look at the group and sometimes be very direct, maybe with an individual member, not because they've done anything wrong, but because it doesn't work with the group or other things. These things are tricky to navigate, and they bring out our integrity. They bring out the issues of the things I'm talking about. It's very easy even just to stumble over or accidentally abuse our power and not know we're doing it, not realize that we're talking down to people that we feel like are below us. These are all subtle and powerful Leo ideas. This is why I'm talking about it a lot. We tend to gloss over these things like, oh, well, I don't have a big ego. In fact, I'm just the opposite. I'm insecure. I lack confidence, and blah, 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 and I don't do that. And everybody does it. I don't care who you are. You do it. You do all of it. We all do all of it. You do it in some ways. I know it. We all do it to certain degrees. Until you're a Mahatma and an enlightened Satguru, you do it. So we have to acknowledge this. This is why we're alive. We're here to learn. In fact, in many ways, and again, you don't learn this until you have been around a little bit longer, but after a while, you start to see that those people who come off as being, oh, but I don't do that. I'm the one, I'm so, I lack confidence. I'm always the one helping others. I'm always the one who doesn't feel confident enough. You learn, your radar goes up more quickly with them, because that's always the other side of, yeah, but as soon as you become intimately involved with me and you're vulnerable, then you'll see where, and in situations where that person has power, that person who is not confident to do things like in their work, or they always feel like no one takes advantage, that people take advantage of them. When you become intimate with them, and I don't even mean sexually, but I just mean the more you get to know them, the more you realize how much projection of their insecurity you will get. You will get that misused confidence, that misused power. You will see it come out in their life. That insecurity. It comes out. And again, this is why I talk about integrity, not confidence, because confidence is often a facade. It's often a behavior, a personality trait. Integrity is not a personality trait. Integrity is a core character trait that creates confidence, but actual confidence, which is the confidence to be vulnerable, to know that you don't have all the answers, to say things that are uncomfortable, to be real. You can tell someone has integrity because they're real. They're not BSing you, even if they're saying things you don't want to hear, even if they're saying things that aren't popular, they say it because there's integrity. How much integrity is in your life? How much are you just trying to get people to like you, or trying to do this, or blah, 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 because underneath it all, there's something not there's no integrity. And I'm not saying there's no integrity, that's wrong. Because there's a lapse in true integrity and pure integrity, because everybody has some. And this is actually what happens when we go through life's difficulties. And we see what someone is made of, what we're evaluating, and especially it's with the sun and with the sign of Leo, is integrity. The sun is what wants integrity, starts to demand integrity of ourselves and of others. That truth of who you really are. Not the behavior, not the personality, not what you get when you behave a certain way. Truth of who you really are. So in this new moon, in this cycle, when sun and moon come together here, it's that cycle for 30 days. We have that 30-day cycle coming out. And so we'll be working on that lesson for 30 days. And in fact, tomorrow I'm going to be doing the forecast for all 12 signs, like I said. So as I said, the forecast for all 12 signs will be, I will do tomorrow. So if you want to see how that influences your sign, then let me know. Because, for example, if you're Capricorn, then that's your 8th house. So that place of integrity for you comes through the 8th house. You have to manage your fears and vulnerabilities. That's where you learn integrity. If it's Cancer, it's 2nd house, which has to do with values, money, possessions, other people like your family. This is where you can tend to lose integrity and where you need to stay in integrity. Again, this is always the thing. Every sign brings that lesson. So for Aries, integrity comes through 5th house things. For Pisces, integrity comes through 6th house things. That's the course through which that life lesson is entered for you. So this also has to do with the nakshatra of Purva Falguni. So Purva Falguni is ruled by the god called Bhagha, or the god of delight. And of course, in the Indian sidereal zodiac, which is referred to in every text, there are no tropical zodiac signs in Indian astrology. It's purely sidereal. The first section of Leo is related to the qualities of Magha on a more esoteric, spiritual, cosmic level. So I've been talking about like the personality traits and the dynamic on Earth and interpersonal through the zodiac signs. That's what Leo is. But then on a more cosmic level, you have Magha is the first section of Leo, which shows a soul connection to the Pitris, the divine ancestors. It literally shows how the king is not elected. The king is the king through their birthright, through their line of succession. And you see this very clearly in Indian mysticism and metaphysics. We are a product of our progeny, of our karma, of the people that bore us in this lifetime. We can know a lot about ourselves by analyzing those things. That's the first section of Leo, the heritage. The second section that's related to Leo and the king and finding that core integrity and all those things has to do with Bhagha, who is the god of delight. Once we're the king, well, it's good to be the king. Once you're sitting on the throne, which is what Magha is, it's literally the king's throne. Then you have a lot of power. And it's delightful to have power. It's delightful to sit on the throne. And we're supposed to delight and enjoy in life. We all have a certain amount of power. That's why I said all of you are kings in something in our life. We all are the domain, the lord over some domain. And again, how do we act? How do we delight? Again, the good king, the good sovereign shares that power and delights in seeing others benefit from his power or her power. The evil king or the wicked king wants to keep all the delight and joy for themselves. I'm the important one. Praise me. Give me attention. I'm the important one, the powerful one. And they delight in their own delight, in their own glory, rather than delighting in being generous and sharing and being literally humbled by the power and the privilege and the benefit that goes along with it. Once you're the king in that realm, you already have the power. You don't need to order people around or demand praise unless you have no integrity, unless you are insecure, weak, and defining yourself by the praise you get from those you can demand it from. Think of how sad that is. And this is what happens when we lack confidence, for example, is we wind up delighting and finding joy and happiness in those who we demand it from. Make sure to keep reinforcing my ego and reinforcing the fact that I'm more powerful than you. Kind of like what I was saying that world leaders have discovered about our current president, sorry to say. Not that he isn't doing good or this or that. I mean, this is a personality trait that we can all see, and even his admirers would have to recognize. He likes to be complimented and praised. And if you compliment and praise him, he'll leave you alone and probably give you what you want, at least for a while, unless he starts wanting something you have, then he's just going to take it. The other thing that happens is when someone does that, the person who's getting the praise doesn't respect the other person because they know that it's simply due to the threat of the punishment that comes later. So again, this is why even those kinds of relationships are not in integrity. There's no integrity in a relationship when that is the energetic exchange. There is no integrity in it. Honestly, it's like paying for a hooker. It's like paying for a prostitute. And then thinking, oh yeah, she really thinks I'm hot. Well, no, you gave her money. So that counterfeit praise that feeds our ego is something that we have to really watch for in Leo on a deep level. And the way we will see the behavior show up is someone becomes lazy and just kind of enjoys the spoils of the riches. It's literally like the stereotype of the king sitting back fat and lazy, eating grapes with concubines, stealing all the money from the kingdom while the kingdom goes to hell. Well, but eventually, you know what? They show up with the pitchforks. The citizens show up with the pitchforks, and because the king only rules by the sanction of the people for so long. And that's true in anyone's life. For example, even with the way people treat their children, they have power over their children, but one day the children are going to grow up. One day the children will grow up and you won't be getting that praise anymore. One day the people that you have power over will not fear you anymore. They won't be there to help you and to rescue you and bail you out when you need help. That's why when someone treats their underlings that way, great, enjoy it while you're on top, because you're not always going to be on top. You're going to be descended upon by enemies, and you're going to need those people who you've genuinely cared about and genuinely served to help you at that point. One of the things that it's very scary about what's happening in the United States right now and with the president, I saw this at the very beginning of the presidency. I said one day he will have no one around him to support him, maybe not even his family. And we're seeing that now. Must be terrible now for him, knowing that even the people in his White House, in his circle, he doesn't know who he can trust now, because he is not and he knows how he's treated them. He's not cultivated any real loyalty. And that's scary, especially with someone with that much power, literally that much power to start wars. And this is, look in your personal life, look in your own life and see in those moments where you're totally alone because you've sacrificed certain things. I'll say I've sacrificed certain things for my work, to want to give a lot for my work and things like that. I've definitely overlooked friendships and relationships and other kinds of things where it certainly left me more alone than I'm sure than most people. I have that karma anyway to really, it's not because of misusing, or it's not because of mistreating people. Because like, for instance, with so many like students and so many other things, I've cultivated so much goodwill. Anytime I ask, all of that's there, but on a different level, like a relationship level, friendship level. And at the start of my Venus Dasha, which just started a couple years ago, I really became aware of this, because again, you get the karmas of certain things. When the planetary cycles run, you start getting those karmas. So I started really getting that awareness when Venus Dasha started a couple years ago. And I'm like, especially because I really love people and interacting with people and having friends and all. It gets harder to get friends at some point, but there was the shift that started, that's still going on, where I'm feeling so much more energized around even finding, new friendships, making new friendships, and putting in that extra time, because it's all about the time we put in. This is what karma is. We get back what we put out. So for many years, especially while I was building my career and looking to teach more and all of that, that's all I put my time into. I didn't put really like any time into cultivating, just like friendship really kind of got pushed aside. Venus Dasha, definitely cultivating more friendship, because that's what I want. And so when you want something, you put the time into doing it, and then it comes back that way. So this new moon has so much to do with all of that. All of these themes, being the good king who is generous. It starts with a baseline of integrity. And if you can be influenced by praise or blame, either one, that's not the yogic path. Swami Shivananda says one of the ways to recognize a yogi is he can't be influenced by praise or censure. Oh, you're so great. Oh, you're so horrible. When you have integrity, you appreciate that people benefit from it, but it doesn't change anything. You're upset that maybe somebody didn't like it, but doesn't change you. That maybe changes you more because you notice the criticism and you're like, is there a kernel of truth in that? What can I learn from that? But you're not swayed by it. It doesn't determine whether or not you still show up and contribute. You're not flattered by the praise. There's no aversion, and you don't stop contributing because of the criticism. Integrity is usually integrity toward a vision and a purpose. Many people learn this when they have children, when they do work that is bigger than themselves. A quality of integrity comes into their life because they now need to show up in a bigger way in order to advance this thing that they love. That's why we learn integrity by doing something that we love. And so this Leo new moon is going to be a big time for you to really connect with the true power and to really see how you use that power, whether or not you abuse that power, and in what situations, what you have to learn from, and to, what you have to learn from yourself in situations. Someone's asking, what does this mean in the 6th? What does this mean here and there? Again, if you want to know, I do this every month, as I explained. For only 50 cents, you can find out what it means for your chart, and also get 2 weeks of daily forecasts, and where every day I do a forecast, an update. Again, it's for 50 cents. And not only that, not only do you get daily forecasts, and you also see how this influences your sign based on your ascendant, but you also get 8 hours of class material that I taught at conferences. This is from the sign up page, and you get a great chart template reading. I'm sorry, a great chart reading template. Sorry. This is a professional chart reading template that I give my advanced students. Like I think it's 55 minutes, then 4.5 hours of classes that I taught where I explain the planets as spiritual forces, how astrology actually works, why the planets are seen as gods, how are you and everything in creation a microcosm of divine genius, each of the planets in that way. Then the deeper meaning of planets and signs. Again, this is another 90-minute video. This was taught at a conference where people spent hundreds of dollars to come. You get it really just, for 50 cents as part of this registration. And then also organizing in some great chart reading examples, some case studies. Then you also get this quantum Vedic astrology course that I taught. It was a 3-hour course that I taught a couple years ago, 3-hour lecture on Vedic astrology, neuroscience, and quantum physics. So again, this is for people who want to understand a little bit more about their astrology and learn more, go a little deeper. Again, it's only 50 cents. I'll post a link one more time before I sign off. Now, of course, when I'm talking about this as a cycle, okay? This is the 30-day cycle of Leo, and these are the lessons that you're working on. And so, but the new moon day on September 9th is always good for introspection, reflection, particularly the day before September 8th and 9th are really good for embracing that new cycle, because it's the last phase of the previous cycle. Right now, we're in the waning phase of the Cancer cycle. That's where we're at right now. Again, that's how it works. So right now, I'm recording this on September the 6th. This is the lunar day. Moon is in Cancer. When you look in the sky, the moon is very dark. It's getting to where you can't see the moon. It's these last couple lunar days. And the moon is waning, waning, waning. So you see on September 7th, the moon is it's getting closer. It's about to go into Leo. September 8th, the moon is very dark. These are all good days, especially September 8th. And on the new moon day, they're very good days for meditation, reflection, introspection, because the mind, which is the moon, is getting darker and waning in importance. The moon and the mind is emotions. It's our emotional body. And that emotional body is what keeps us attached. You're a bundle of emotions, and those emotions make you feel like you are alive. It makes you feel like you are alive. Yes, I'm alive. Me. This person is alive. And one day this person's going to be dead. I don't want to think about that. Help me do something to stop that. But yes, I feel like this person is alive, and I get it. You feel like it. You feel like you're alive. Got it. And when I say you feel like you are alive, I don't mean your soul. I mean, you feel like your body is alive, and it is. It won't always be. That whole feeling and that attachment to that feeling that me, this separate person, comes from the moon on the surface. Because we identify with the surface of life, we identify with the surface of the mind, which are the emotions. So when the moon gets dark, before new moons, that whole attachment matrix gets burned up. It gets consumed in the fire of consciousness and awareness, which is shown by the sun. So when the sun and moon come together, there's a great opportunity for that whole thing to be penetrated, that whole attachment to the emotions to get consumed in the fire of truth, which is that you're not in this, that you're not just part of this world, that you're not just part of this emotional matrix. So as we get closer to this new moon, there's more possibility that a deeper awareness can settle in, a deeper consciousness can settle in, deeper than all of the attachment. So again, feel that in the next couple of days. And so I've been looking at, been looking at at some of the comments as they sort of go by. Someone says, wait, it's 50 cents right now? Yes, it's 50 cents right now. 50 cents for 8 hours of classes, 2 weeks of forecasts, and understanding what this new moon means for your sign. 50 cents. So if you want to do that, go ahead. I can't make it any better than that. If someone's not willing to pay 50 cents, they're just not interested, and that's fine too. But again, this is how I make these things available. And you're free to take advantage of that if you want to. So I see Marlene's asking a bunch of questions. I'm not really answering questions now on this. This has already gone quite long. It was about the Leo new moon. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And I appreciate that people showed up, and I'm glad people enjoyed it. And again, here's the thing: people that want to be more in touch with me around these kinds of things, people join this thing for 50 cents. Again, I'll give you a last insight. This is actually how you build a sort of business kind of funnel as well. You offer something for 50 cents, you give people a whole lot of value, a whole lot of teachings, real teachings, and then they want to get more. They want to interact more. They don't have to. You could try it and never do anything again. But often what happens is people start with a video like this, and then you offer something like that a little bit, and then they take advantage of it. They get all this value, and then they're a member of the daily forecast. They read them, and then they start seeing, wow, okay, this makes a lot of sense. And then by and by you start learning, and then you want to learn more, whether it's from me or someone else. So this is why I do it. This is why I have these kinds of things. I also have full-blown certification courses that people get, and all kinds of stuff in between. But this is an easy way for people to kind of bridge the gap between, I'm just digesting another free video on the internet. What can I get from it? What can I get for me? Me, how about me? What about my chart? My chart. And it goes from that into something a little more that's not just about your chart, where you actually can get some decent teaching for not a lot of money. I mean, for 50 cents, for God's sake, it's barely anything. And so, and I already know that people aren't interested, people who won't get it or people who don't do it, they're just not interested. So that's okay too. I'm free to just do this and explain these things. But it's kind of like a opening of the door. Like, hey, you want to see what's in here? You can just kind of peek in the door. So I offer that too. So either way, folks, have a good one. And maybe we'll see you in the member site, in the astrology training lab, where you learn about astrology, and then you get to watch it every day. Also learn about how this Leo cycle will affect you. If not, we'll see you here on YouTube and my email list and whatever else you're involved in. Take care.